This weekend it's time for the Bloodstorm Skill Model Challenge. This is an event that happens yearly in Veldhoven in the Netherlands. And there's a couple of Bloodstorm tournaments in the Netherlands each year, and they're all focused on different aspects of the hobby. This one is at the same time as the Skill Model Challenge in the center that they hosted at in Veldhoven. And the Skill Model Challenge is one of the painting competitions, I believe one of the biggest in Europe, if not even the biggest. And so this event is mostly focused on bringing some beautiful armies to play with and enjoying the game just for the fun of it. So it's not really an ETC type of 4,500 point tournament with the best lists ever and stuff like that. It's a tournament that's been held over 2 days, so for a total of 5 games. And yeah, the rules pack is quite interesting. If you haven't seen it and you're interested in interesting in special rules packs, you should definitely give it a look. Because the event this demands you to bring an army that is partitioned in a main army and 2 support armies. So you have a main army of 2,500 points and then 2 support armies of each 1,000 points. And the different scenarios they differ in the list that you put on the table. So I believe the first round it's just your main army, the second round it's your main army plus 1 support army, and then there's a round with just your main army and the support army of someone else. I believe there's a round with support armies, and then at the end you have one big battle with the full 4,500 points. And there's some restrictions to list building and as usual. But the interesting thing is also that you are allowed to combine different armies together. Not all armies, but you can make some. That there's some selections. And when I was looking at my collection, I saw that Warriors of the Dark Gods and Dread Elves are allowed to come together in a big army in this tournament. And these are also 2 armies that are quite decently painted of mine, or at least I think these are the ones that are painted to the highest standard amongst my collection. So I decided to give it a go with Warriors of the Dark Gods and Dread Elves. So then the rule is that you have to take a main army of one faction and 1 support army of the same faction, and then you can complement it with a support army of another faction. So in my case, I have a main army, Warriors of the Dark Gods, with a support army, Warriors of the Dark Gods, and the supporting Dread Elf army. And yeah, I'm not going to discuss the list in too much detail because, there's just a lot of different rules that you have to keep in mind when building this list. The most important thing is that any general or BSB has to be in the main army. Yeah, that's the most important thing basically. And also the Bloodstorm scenarios, they focus heavily on scenarios and objectives rather than scoring or than victory points. So it's very valuable to bring scoring units in this tournament, and also some mobile scoring. So in the end, I got a bit of a I don't know if it's an extremely strong list in the end, but we will see. I have recently been fiddling around with Warriors a bit, and I think I got to the conclusion that I like the flexibility of Greed, and I think that an Alchemy Mage really complements Greed because you can get the rerolls to hit quite easily if you put some Flaming Standard somewhere. So normally I would change the 10 warrior unit with the Banner of Speed also to a Flaming Standard. And now this time for the scenarios, I think the speed is also quite useful. Yeah, so it's a list with some magic in there, and then there's the Dread Elves that can actually in this way also make use of the Helmor and also transport themselves through the Helmor markers. Yeah, the lists in general for the event, they have been released, and there's quite a big variation within the list. And I believe Warriors of the Dark Gods is one of the most popular armies, which I also expected, as probably with a lot of scoring requirements, most people are just going to go for combat blocks that are scoring. They're going to forgo the gunline type of list, because you have to have mobile scoring, because you have to go to the center of the table, for example, to the enemy's deployment zone. So then gunlines would struggle a bit more with that. So the list of my opponent is a combined Vermin Swarm Warriors of the Dark Gods list. So he managed to squeeze in a Vermin Demon and the 2 obligatory Dreadmills. So he played an ETC list that was basically a Vermin Demon, 2 Dreadmills, and as much Plague Disciples as you can fit with some Plague Catapult. And it worked quite well, just because there's some quirky decisions that the rules team made with these models. But I'm not gonna go into that for this video. Anyway, so he has his Vermin Demon that gives him good leadership all around. He has nice magic, and the support Warriors of the Dark Gods is just a very independent support. So I think it's also a good choice. So let's get into the battle. We decided to go for the last scenario out of the possible scenarios that we could pick. And we start with deployment. So this one is with the full armies. So we both have each our main army and both of our support armies to total up the 4,500 points of the list. Yeah, and as you can see, I'm playing on the top, and my opponent is playing at the bottom. I used the Wasteland Torch of the Warrior Knights to turn a field that was close to the wall on the bottom of the left into a ruins. Yeah, so my thoughts going into this game, to me the Vermin Demon is really a problem. And Vermin Swarm in general against Warriors of the Dark Gods is disastrous because you kind of rely on your armor with Warriors of the Dark Gods, and Vermin Swarms have quite a lot of ways in which they can just go around armor. And ward save that Warriors of the Dark Gods models with Hellforged armor, they get a 5+ Aegis save against toxic hits. This mitigates a little bit the damage that Vermin Swarm does to you, but the problem actually is that most of the Vermin Swarm armor penetrating stuff that hurts the most is actually just AP10 rather than toxic hits. For example, the Dreadmill is AP10, the Vermin Demon is AP10, and stuff like the Plague Disciples, they have the toxic hits, but yeah, I don't think that's really the problem that Warriors of the Dark Gods is facing with Vermin Swarm. This Vermin Demon is just a problem for Warriors of the Dark Gods, in the sense that the only way I can actually touch it is through magic, because if I put any of my units in combat with it, it's most likely gonna win. So I guess the best shot at dealing with it is still for the Warriors, just the plain Warriors, because they can take his attacks, and then I'll still have like 4 or 5 Warriors left, probably some more, but and then I just have to hope that I do a couple of wounds. But then after the thunderstorm, probably my Warriors are gonna be decimated also. And otherwise, the Dark Acolytes might be able to do a couple of wounds maybe, but that's not Warriors of the Dark God stuff. So I do have the magic that can take care of it. But so if I were to play with my main army just against his main army, it's gonna be a disaster for me. So what is happening? So on the top, I place my Dark Acolytes on the top right, just to push my opponent away, because we played a counter thrust deployment. And the second drop is my Raptor Chariot into the ruins. I find it a bit funny that it's really a good idea to put chariots in general in ruins, but it is because you get a hard cover, and you just move with your advance rate, so you don't have to take any dangerous terrain tests unless you charge out. And I believe at that point my opponent, maybe I put down another unit before my opponent dropped, but then my opponent dropped. And I didn't really mind this because, well, nothing had been decided on the board yet. And my opponent apparently really desperately wanted to have the first turn. I'm fine with that because in terms of ranged output, the difference between our lists is not that impressive. So he has the 2 Dreadmills and he has the Naphtha Launcher, and he has the Divination Magic. But the Unerring Strike with AP1 doesn't really bother me too much. Fate's Judgment with AP0, I believe, doesn't really bother me that much. It's just Hereditary Vermin Swarm 2d6 Strength 4 with AP2 that bothers me the most, I believe. So if you only have one spell of your opponent that you really have to worry about, then it's not too bad. And yeah, we forgot that with Bloodstorm, the maximum that you can get for undeployed units is +2. And yeah, we forgot that. My opponent was actually more confident about starting than he should have, according to the rules that we misplayed. Yeah, so I'm rounding up my deployment, and yeah, the things that I'm figuring is that I would like to just take care of the Dreadmills as quickly as possible. I have to keep back my Forsworn, because if the Dreadmills are gonna shoot at my Forsworn, it's gonna hurt, because that's quite an effective unit for them to shoot at. Otherwise, the Warrior Knights, they have not been placed at the position where they seem to be behind the ruins, but instead are at the place where the template for them is lying on top of the ruins with the dice. The models are a bit heavy, and I didn't really want to balance them, so they ended up standing behind with the template positioned as it is. And yeah, I was not too worried about what was happening, because my mage, who's in the chosen unit in the ruins, he has very clear line of sight onto the Vermin Demon. My opponent can't really hide his Vermin Demon, so I do get my spells at him. And on the right, my opponent doesn't have any real chaff, so I might be able to make sure that I get the charge on his Chosen Knights and his Warrior Knights on the right. Also, that's where I put the Helmar marker before deployment, so that should be fine. So basically, I could kind of front load the left side of the table with my Witch Elves, with my Warriors, with the Chaos Lord. And then, yeah, I was just hoping to be able to mop it up and hold back a little bit, maybe, and then try to solve my initial problems with some magic. And yeah, the Dreadmills. If I can charge a Dreadmill without any bad consequences, then I'm definitely going for it. So my opponent, he got first turn, and he just moves up with some of his units. So I realized that I didn't tell you the scenario yet, but the scenario that we are playing is one where you, well, it's called Foster the People, and it basically at the end of the game you have, oh well, during the game and then in the different game rounds you have to have as many scoring units as possible within 6 inches of specific markers that are deployed before the battle. So these markers are the, well, faintly visible brown tokens that you can see on the field. So one of them is below my Chosen Lord and his warrior unit. One of them is in front of the Thunderhawks on the height of the ruins. And the last one is a little bit below the Dread Judges at the edge of the forest. So starting, I believe, from game turn 2, at the end of the game turn, so after both players have went, we check how many scoring units we have within 6 inches, with the center of the unit within 6 inches of the marker. The person well, for each one that you control, you get a point basically. And at the end of the game, if the difference is something like 6 or more points, you get a 4-0. If it's 4 or more points, you get a 3-0, something like that. So it's really important because victory points are only secondary objective points basically. So a difference of 2,000 points only nets you a 2-1 win in terms of victory points, and then from 3,000 points it's 3-0 or something. Something amongst those lines, but you can check it in the reader if you would like to. So for my opponent's first turn, yeah. So generally for this objective, I am very happy to be playing second because I can compensate for what my opponent is doing in terms of capturing objectives. So yeah, his turn basically consists out of moving the dreadmill so far up that he can shoot at stuff of mine, putting up a little bit of pressure with the chosen knights on the right, and keeping line of sight on, or while keeping the Helmar token occupied with some of his units. So not this turn yet. I can move some units through, but he's trying to make sure that he's gonna be able to prevent me from getting out there. And then on the left, he just advances a little bit with his Vermin Demon. We proceed to magic and to shooting. Most of it is not that effective, I believe. So he knocks off a couple of wounds here and there. The thing that I was most bummed out by was the fact that he actually managed to shoot 2 Dark Acolytes off with just the Dreadmill. So he hits on a 4+ and he wounds me on a 2+, but I have a 4+ ward save. Having 2 of these guys killed is I didn't really like it, because my plan was to charge with the Dark Acolytes into the Dreadmill after, and having 4 Dark Acolytes that charge in, or 3, does make a difference. Just because, well, with lucky dice rolls, he can kill 3 Dark Acolytes. Getting 4 Dark Acolytes down with a Dreadmill in combat in just 1 round is kind of difficult. Yeah, so that was the saddest moment of turn 1 for me. And then I'm looking at the board and I'm like, yeah, there's some possibilities here, because the Dreadmills are going to be a really annoying unit for me to deal with. So I'm looking at the board and I see that my Dark Acolytes, they can get a charge on the Dreadmill on a 9, and my Raptor Chariot can get a charge on the other Dreadmill on 11. So I just go for it and I make both charges, so I was very happy. And yeah, the risk reward here is good for me, I think, because the risk that I'm running is that I get a failed charge. If I get a failed charge, I'm still not fearless with both units, so if my opponent decides to charge, I can flee away and I can counter charge with any of my other units. And yeah, there's no really bad consequences to it. And then on the left, I use the Banner of the Relentless Company on the warriors, so that they can march 15 inches, but also the Doom Lord can just, or the Chosen Lord can just go out of the unit and march 15 inches, and he is able to, I thought he was able to get out of the line of sight of the Vermin Demon, and that is true because the Vermin Demon is actually a little bit more forward than, yeah, he is out of sight of the Vermin Demon. We checked this beforehand. And then the Witch Elves, they just went up on the left, just to put some pressure on my opponent also, because he has these footpads on the left flank and they can shoot. Shooting Witch Elves is a very good idea for this type of unit. Getting charged by Witch Elves is not a good idea, so I thought I would just get there as quickly as possible and solve some problems there. Otherwise, I feel like at this moment I cannot really advance towards my opponent. With a combination of the Chosen Knights lurking, me having quite good magic to deal with the Chosen Knights, and then not really being a gain in advancing any further, because I do want to kind of counter my opponent's moves in terms of scoring. I'm good where I am. And I can put down my helm markers. This game is going to improve for me over the turns that we play, and I'm going to be able to outmaneuver my opponent if he allows me to get as many turns in as I need. And then we go to magic, and with the entire magic phase, I only managed to do 1 wound on the vermin demon. But then we go to combat, where the real magic is supposed to happen. So yeah, I didn't really think too much about it, but I was like, on the right with the Dark Acolytes, I will probably win the combat by 1. And it could be that I win by 2. It's not really likely that I don't win at all. My opponent has Discipline 7 on the Doom Wheel. It goes to 6, maybe 5. So that's quite a reasonable thing to assume that I'm going to break the Doom Wheel. It might not rally. It might rally. If it rallies, I can try again. It's going to be out of the game at least for a couple of turns. And the Doom Wheel in the middle. Yeah, Raptor Chariot. It really depends on how much impacted you roll. And I only rolled a 2, so I only got 3 impacted. And in the end, I believe I did 2 or 3 wounds. 3 wounds, I believe, because the Raptors also still have 2 attacks each. And then my opponent also failed to break test on this Dreadmill, so both of the Dreadmills were just gone after turn 1. So that was amazing to me, because it really takes off the pressure of my opponent's list. So now my warriors can just move forward more freely. And yeah, my opponent now has a little bit of a problem of having a Raptor Chariot in his back lines. And the Dark Acolyte that can still chaff sometime. And also the Red Arms still just managed to flee away. So that was, yeah, this was quite an impressive turn of events. Then we go to my opponent's turn, and yeah, he's going to try and solve some issues that he has in the back of his lines. So he decides that he wants to charge my Chosen Lord. So that ends up in the Chaos Lord being face to face with the Plague Monks in addition to the Plague Disciples, which is not really what I had planned for. The Footpads, they had to charge away, so they charged into the Witch Elves or the Blades of Nab. And well, that's going to be a very sad fate for them, because the Witch Elves have agility 6 and the Footpads have agility 4, so they go to agility 5 on the charge, and they're just naked rats. So yeah, chances are that they will get slaughtered over there. And the Warrior Knights on the right, they are still creeped out by the portal, because in my turn I put a portal token just in front of the Warrior Knights in the ruins, so that either the Warrior Knights could go through or the Warriors all the way on the left. So I'm realizing that by this point I'm kind of forgetting already about the objectives that we had. But also my opponent does not have a lot of scoring units within 6 inches of the tokens. We go into magic and combat. I believe I take 1 wound on the Warrior Knights because of his hereditary. Yeah, I believe so. I think it's mostly on the lower point sizes at the tournament that it's really going to matter whether you have magic or not. And with some re-evaluation of my list, I think I should have put Sorcerer in the main army and the Chosen Lord or something else in the support army in some way. Because like this, if I just play with my main army, I struggle by not having magic. So yeah, that's going to be interesting. So then in combat, well, for shooting the Thunderhulks, I don't do any wound to the Raptor Chariot, so I got away quite lucky there. In combat, my opponent tries to do a wound on the Chosen Lord, but he doesn't manage to. And the Chosen Lord goes to town on the Plague Disciples and completely wipes them out, I believe. So that's 8 wounds for me. And yeah, then my opponent has to take a break test, which he actually passes. So that's at least something. So yeah, that would be a big problem for me. Then the Blades of Nab, they completely wipe out the footpaths. And then I believe we go over to my turn. So things are looking good. That's just all I can say, basically. Things are just looking good. The only thing is that I don't have an answer for the Vermin Demon yet, other than to just grind through the wounds with magic. So in terms of magic, I have quite some interesting possibilities. I figure that the Warrior Knights, they can actually now, without the Vermin Demon and the Thunder Hulks looking at the position of the Warrior Knights, of the Warriors, they can charge in, because I'm expecting that I can cast the +1 armor on these guys, so I can go for any weapon that's gonna dish out some more damage and still get my 1+ armor save. And then with some alchemy spell, I get reroll to wound because I have the Wasteland Torch with flaming attacks. So I can go for paired weapons to hit on 3s, wound on 4s with a reroll, and then I'm gonna be quite confident to remove some warriors of my opponent. Probably the turn after break the warriors and be able to charge into some other direction. So the Chosen Lord is being aided by the Witch Elves. And on the right, I was struggling a little bit with what to do. And I guess in retrospect, yeah, the issue I had mostly was that the warriors in the middle of the field were in my way. And I don't have any musician on the Forsworn. I don't know if I have it on the warriors. I should check that. But anyway, they can't flee also. So they were just in my way, and I should have played them differently. And the solution I came up with in this turn is not the best one, because I should have been at least within 6 inches of the objective with my Dread Judges. Yeah, but otherwise it looks kind of good. So the warriors on the left, they can go for the objective on the left. The warriors in the middle can go for the objective near the ruins together with the warrior knights. Forsworn and the Dread Judges can go for the objective near the forest. And yeah, my opponent doesn't have a lot of answers to what I'm doing. Still have my Dark Acolyte on the right. That's there for 1 turn of chaff. I still have my Raptor Chariot that's behind enemy lines now. The only issue is still this Vermin Demon, and I still don't know how to handle this other than through magic. And in the end, it's actually 4 wounds onto the Vermin Demon. So I'm very happy with that, because he has only 1 wound left now, which completely turns over the game. So this magic is really essential for me to have against this Vermin Demon. Then we go to combat. I also still get my +1 armor spell off, so this was definitely a good magic phase. And the Warrior Knights, they completely go to town on... Yeah, also what I still missed is that the Raptor Chariot, he still shot at the Vermin Demon, and he managed to take off the last wound. So at this point, my opponent actually conceded the game. All of what he had. So we decided to quickly set up a new game. And this time only with the main armies. And yeah, spoiler alert, my main army doesn't really bode well against the main army of my opponent. So the simplified version of the scenario is hold the ground, where you have to capture the center of the table with marching columns deployment. Yeah, I just have 4 units that I can put down. They're all combat units. They all lose 1-on-1 against the Vermin Demon. My opponent still has a Dreadmill that can annoy everyone in my army. And he has the Vermin Demon that can 1-on-1 just beat any of my units, I believe. So yeah, going into this game, I was not confident at all. But we'll see what happens. So previous game was a 7-0 to me, so I thought I should give my opponent the chance to also have a bit of a fun game. Yeah, so yeah, I finished deploying first and tried to give my opponent first turn. Just because in this scenario again, it's at the end of the game turn that when you check for the scenario. Maybe I should have tried to take the first turn in order to be able to move my warrior knights on the left a bit more up. And I can see that now in the recording there's a little bit of a stroke of light coming through, so I'm sorry for that, but luckily the part of the table that was important is still illuminated properly. Yeah, so my opponent moves up with the Dreadmill just to shoot off a couple of warriors, and he's going to try and magic me down a bit. So he can be very aggressive with Vermin Demon in this game, because the only thing I could do against it is to just put a normal warrior unit against it, hope he doesn't kill too many of me, and hope that I get lucky and just kill it. Now that I really wouldn't know what I can do against the Vermin Demon at this point level, because the lords that I have in my army, he hits them on a 3+, he wounds them on a 3+ also. They both have 4 wounds, so they might survive one round of Vermin Demon. But I'm also not killing the Vermin Demon in one round. He has agility 8, I believe, so he strikes for before either of my characters. He doesn't care about armor. My focus is armor. So yeah, yeah, it's a crazy model at 2,500 points. Well, basically it just turns the matchup in a rock paper scissors matchup. Like, do you have an answer to a Vermin Demon? Okay, you do. Okay, screw me. Do you not have an answer to a Vermin Demon? Okay, well, that's you who's gonna have to handle the pain. So my first turn, my thoughts mostly are that well, the warrior knights, they can still try and get the charge on the Dreadmill, because a full unit of them should be able to just go through. And then for the rest, I just want to set up for the scenario. Basically, I want to try and delay my opposing forces as much as I can. And this thing in the middle, what I do is I angle my warrior units towards each other so that my opponent can charge in one unit. I can challenge out his Vermin Demon with the champion. I'll be steadfast. No, I won't even be steadfast. I wouldn't be steadfast because he's also gigantic. So I would lose by some by some combat res. But I might still be able to make the break test with the reroll and discipline 9 standard. So I might be able to stick, and then I can countercharge with the other units, having a flank charge. And yeah, you never know what might go wrong. So my general can then do a challenge, maybe get a couple of wounds in, and then just evaporate him. Could happen. If it happens, I'm gonna be extremely happy. Still, I would have 2 units of Plague Disciples to worry about. This is army at 2,500 points. It's just insane. Yeah, but anyway, yeah. So my opponent's second turn, he just advances forward. He doesn't really have to be afraid of my units, basically. So the Dreadmill goes into the ruins so that I can shoot without cover at my warrior knights. So in my turn, I charge in with my warrior knights onto the Dreadmill, and the warrior knights actually bounce. So they do like 1 wound or something, and then they just get killed by the Dreadmill. Yeah, so this battle is one where my opponent definitely has the advantage. As you can see, I just marched up with my lord and his unit. I believe, well, probably still within the line of sight of the demon, but I don't see any solution to what I'm facing. So the only hope I had was that maybe my opponent would just go with some of his units in, not with the vermin demon, and I would still have a chance to mow down some units, especially if also the warrior knights were able to deal with the dreadmill, which they were not. But at this point, yeah, it's just already time for my opponent to mop up everything. So the meat grinder has a failed charge into the Doomlord, but the rest of the units, they get in, the dreadmill gets in, and basically it's just a done job by now. We're still playing it out just for the for the enjoyment of my opponent mostly. And then we have this one big combat where, well, my opponent is gonna try to go to town. I opt for my spiked shields because I'm expecting quite some strength 3 hits also, and maybe it balances out. And I was actually surprised by how bad this went for me. So the Chaos Lord, he managed to do 5 wounds onto the Red Arms. The War Days then later did a couple more. The Toxic hits, they did a couple of wounds, and I'm just tracking it with the dice now. But not too bad. And then his attacks, yeah, it's the strength 3, strength 5 hits that he did. I only made 1 armor save out of 2. And with the Dreadmill, he once again, I believe he got quite some impact hits, quite some hits from his lightning weapon. And then with the other attacks that he did, he actually didn't wound me, which I was a bit bummed out about because I have a 3+ armor save and every 4+ is a potential wound back at him. So in the end, I believe in terms of wounds we're quite equal actually. So I did 11 wounds and I did even more than 11, I believe. So I did more wounds than him, so it's only a break test at a little bit below my leadership, if I'm right. But in the end I broke anyway, so it doesn't really matter. He catches me because I only run 2 inches, so it's all gone. Then I only have my 5 warriors against the vermin demon left and my Forsworn. Luckily my full Forsworn unit. Wow. Yeah. This is just a done job basically. Like the Forsworn, they could handle themselves probably quite well if it's just the Red Arms of my opponent and the Plague Monks. And also the Plague Disciples, they can just take all 3 units at the same time. And the Dreadmill, yeah, could take off a couple of Forsworn, but then if the Doomlord is able to smack on the Dreadmill, it's gonna go down pretty quickly. It's just the Vermin Demon that's really the big problem, because he can challenge out my Lord. I don't have a champion in the unit also. That's just one of the artifacts of having this kind of unusual list. You try to put in as much scoring as you want with some nicely painted models, and then yeah, I should have put in a musician for a more serious tournament list, but now in this format I'm more concerned about just making nice numbers out of my units and stuff like that. So yeah, the Forsworn, they go into the flank of the Red Arms, and the warriors, they actually rallied from the combat with the Vermin Demon because the Vermin Demon didn't really perform very well there. He still won though. And yeah, we go to combat. The Forsworn, they break the Red Arms and manage to overrun into the Doomwheel. I don't know why the camera by now has gone a little bit foggy, but well, hopefully in the next video it's gonna be alright again. Yeah, so then my opponent has a chance to countercharge with his Vermin Demon. He challenges out my Doom Lord. He does 3 wounds on my Doom Lord, I believe, and then I proceed to do 1 wound on the Vermin Demon. And then it's my turn after that. I managed to stick this round, and then in my turn, my opponent manages to kill the Doom Lord, and there's just a Forsworn left who breaks from. Who fails his break test, so he gets to strike again. I also do countercharge with my warriors onto the Dreadmill, and I managed to smack down the Dreadmill. But in the end, my opponent had more scoring units within the center of the table than me for quite a lot of rounds, even though I did manage to have more than my opponent for 1 round. So I believe it's not a full 7-0 based on the account that I did score 1 point. But yeah, it's very close to a full massacre. Yeah. So I was very happy with the very big win in the first round. Probably my opponent was very happy with the very big win in the second round. So the mistake he made, I think it wasn't really important for him to have these shots with the Dreadmill first turn, which is also why I didn't really mind him taking first turn, especially combined with the scenario. Yeah, I think that's mostly it. But on the other hand, if he gives me more time with the Helmor, he can't really get to the Helmor with the army that he's playing. So it's gonna develop over time, gonna get more portals, gonna give me more flexibility, gonna give my caster more flexibility. That's also not really good for him. So yeah, it's an interesting matchup. But normally the Vermin Swarm should be way better at handling warriors the Dark Gods than getting obliterated by them. But then again, he could recompense with the second game, and he certainly did, making it a very big win for him. See you the next time.